A very good afternoon to you and welcome to this afternoon's webinar with Capital Legacy. I'm James Lennox, the Managing Director of Milk&Sugar. I'll be hosting and producing this afternoon's webinar with two of the powerhouses in the fiduciary and insurance industry. I'm talking about Alex Simeonides, the CEO and co-founder of Capital Legacy, and the Managing Director of Capital Legacy, Brandon Garbutt, who will be joining us this afternoon to chat about all things wills and estate planning. If you're saying to yourself right now, well, wills, I've got a will, then you are one of 30% of the population of this country who has a will, which means that there's a massive section of the population that doesn't have wills. Well worth talking about the costs associated with your demise and things that we don't like to think about. Now, not necessarily a cheerful topic to be discussing in the afternoon, but something that is very topical and important. Guys, welcome to this afternoon's webinar. Great to have you here. Looking forward to chatting to both of you and certainly to finding out about why it's so important to have a will and certainly what the costs are that are associated with wrapping up your estate, because I think a lot of people perhaps don't understand the costs that are associated. So great to have you here. Just very briefly, while we wait for more people to join the webinar, Alex, tell us just a little bit about how lockdown has been going for you personally.
Well, I think it's been a very trying and learning time for all of us. I never quite thought I'd find myself lifting weights in a garage. I've certainly extended my cooking skills. But there's good and bad. So I think the bad point for me is that I lost that divide between work and home, and that those lines got totally blurred. So being able to come back to the office has been a bit of a relief. But in the same breath, I was able to get immersed in my son's homework and get really properly immersed. I have a very busy work life, being the CEO of this business, and I was actually able to get those half hours with him. So mixed bag of tricks for me, actually, as I'm sure it is for many people. Maybe some people are getting a bit tired of it now. Others have maybe grabbed onto something that's a bit more they enjoy, like maybe they enjoy doing the virtual meetings with work and having a bit more flexible time. I think from a business and a personal combination point of view, I'm not 100% sold that we can always be productive by always being 100% at home. I'm not over that hurdle yet. I know many people are saying it, but I think it's too early to make that call. So a lot of question marks, but yeah, been an interesting time.
Brandon, how about you? I mean, it has been difficult, as Alex has been saying. Nobody's really enjoying this, but there are some positives that have come out of this. Do you have any positives out of the lockdown?
Yeah, so I think, James, to echo what Alex was saying, I think we've had to learn new skills. I think for a lot of us, we've had to open that tool shed and that garden shed that we never were used to before. As Alex was saying, also improving on cooking skills, although I don't think my wife would say that I've actually improved at all. But a big negative, if I can say, instead of a positive, was the not having the balance between your work and personal life. I actually found that work actually became busier for us at Capital Legacy, actually working from home. And you actually battle to separate that work from home life. And I think that took a bit of strain on a lot of the family, especially being in confined spaces. But from a positive point of view, we all learned new skills from a personal side and from a work-wise. The virtual consulting, which we'll discuss later, sort of became extremely prevalent, especially in our industry, being able to still remain in contact, and everyone has sort of had to, if I can say, get on board with your virtual consulting and trying to get hold of people through technology. But also, again, to echo Alex's point is, it solved a solution for a small bit, but I think it's too early to say that this is the way forward, that you're going to be working from home. I think there might be a bit of a combination, but I still think that there'll definitely be a place in the office. And I think you'll start to see that sort of certain parts of production have sort of gone down because you kind of lose that energy when you're not in the office. But it has taught us new skills.
There's one thing I'd like to get rid of, is the incessant WhatsApps from 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Or when everyone thinks that you're always available because you're sitting at home and you can't be doing anything.
Well, I see that there are a lot of people joining us from Cape Town, Peter Maritzburg, I see Gideon van der Merwe is here. That's all in our chat room. Of course, it's great to have you as part of this webinar. And one of the things that we do want to do over the course of the next 55 minutes or so is we want to be able to respond to your questions. So do be getting those questions in on the chat section. Trust me, we will try and get to all of them. There's a lot to get through here. We're talking about wills and estate planning. If you've just joined us with the CEO of Capital Legacy, Alex Simeonides, and and his managing director, or the managing director rather than his managing director, I think probably the better way to say that, the managing director.
Afterwards, James.
It depends how the day's going.
We obviously want to try and respond to as many of those questions as possible, but be assured that if we don't manage to respond to them here in this webinar, I know the guys from Capital Legacy will take the time out to make sure that they get through to all of you. So do make sure that you put your questions into that chat room. I'll be checking them out and making sure that we get to them throughout the course of this webinar. I want to jump straight in now that we are kind of warmed up and have gotten to know one another and feel comfortable again. Alex, the obvious question that we need to start with is, who is Capital Legacy and what do you do?
So, if I had to meet you once off at a coffee shop, I'd say Capital Legacy is all about getting more wills done, but more importantly, getting more wills done that are valid. And then when that will needs to be executed, making sure there's the least or no fees. The idea of the business came from a very real situation that I had as a financial advisor. For those who are listening in, they might know what a financial needs analysis is. And you can gloss over the fact that you put in 3.5% for the executive fee. And I did that for 1,000 clients until it came time to pay it. And that 3.5% becomes a real rand amount. And when you need to go to a widow and say, look, we've got the life cover paid out, but I'm going to need a big slug of that to pay for the executive that I hooked you up with, it's not a great conversation to have. So that's why I always say Capital Legacy is all about getting the will done, making sure it's valid, and then when it needs to be acted upon, making sure there's no fees. Typically, our sort of peers in the industry, they stop at sort of getting the will done and then waiting for you to die to try then make as much as possible. But what makes us unique is that we've invented this thing called the Legacy Protection Plan. So it's a policy that goes with your will, and literally it takes care of all the things that are not dealt with between the life insurance industry and the wills industry. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of gaps that we saw. So when some person does their will, that doesn't necessarily talk to their beneficiaries on their life cover. When a person does their life cover, vice versa. When they do their life cover, they're only just taking care of maybe their bond settlements or their estate duty, which is not an executive fee. When they're doing their will, they're not thinking about the debts that they need to settle. So what we do, or the immediate expenses they need to cover. So what the Legacy Protection Plan does is it fills those gaps. It takes care of the executive fees, provides the services. If there needs to be monthly expenses that need to be paid from your estate while they're winding up your estate, takes care of that. If you and your spouse both pass away, because we all got it in our will, if I pass away and my spouse pass away at the same time, what happens then? Then it provides a lot of cash for that. So it fills the gap. And I think that's what Capital Legacy is all about. It's about filling the gap and being unique as a result of that.
Do you think does it surprise you, though, at this stage that I mentioned at the beginning in my preamble in the introduction to this webinar, does it surprise you that 70% of South Africans don't have a will?
Well, then it's improved, huh?
Yeah. So the stat we usually throw out about 80%. But I think, James, it doesn't actually surprise me. It's when I was doing another interview, people were saying in terms of why is that stat there? Well, just like financial planning in general, people don't really wake up in the morning and go, well, I haven't done my will. We've actually seen the converse in that during COVID. Actually, people have woken up and said, I actually need to do a will. But generally, people haven't done that. And I often say that generally the South African market has this Superman complex, it's not going to happen to me. So I kind of put things off until it happens. And unfortunately, you can't put off death until it happens. So I think from a COVID point of view, we've actually seen an uptick. But to go back to your question, definitely not surprised that 70% of people don't have a will. And remember, it's not just a will, it's an up-to-date and valid will. And I think between myself and Alex, we'll probably touch on what actually makes a will valid later on. Because many people think that they have a valid will, but it's actually not. And that's also what we do at Capital Legacy, to actually educate you on what makes a will valid.
But to continue, right? Everything in my mind is not set up well or enabling the person to get the will. And it's not a South African problem. So if you think about it, you've either got to go to an attorney and fork out 2,000-3,000 rand to get it done, take time of your day, or you've got to go to your bank on a Saturday. We know what the queues can be like then. You then are forced to choose an executor, so maybe you're going to have an uncomfortable conversation. You are literally just given a document to sign with no discussion around the sort of playing out of what would happen. And really, for me, the place where the person who should be doing the will, or at least having a hand in the will, is the financial advisor. They're the person that's doing your life insurance. They're the person that's taking care of the funds when you die. but yet you're going to your banker to do your will, or you go into a lawyer who has no idea what your life insurance is doing. So it's completely not integrated in my view, and as a result, that doesn't surprise me at all, because I mean, there's 15,000 life policies being done each month?
Yeah.
How many wills?
Well, and to jump onto that, I think Alex and myself, we did a session about 3 years ago. We were sort of educating the financial advisor market, and it was called Legacy Lessons. And we sort of coined a phrase called the golden thread. And if you look at what the golden thread is we've said, how does financial advising actually work? It should start off at the will. That's where everything should start. And then you go into the F&A, or financial needs analysis, which goes into your retirement planning, your estate planning, when you pass away, to make sure that your beneficiaries are paid out. And then to continue past that is to look after those beneficiaries. But unfortunately, not just in South Africa, as Alex has said, in the rest of the world, is generally financial advice comes in the form of when you're doing the financial needs analysis and when you get the policy paid out to beneficiaries. But those other two parts, that beginning with the will and the end, have generally been neglected. And that's what we've been trying to string together, and that's what we call the golden thread, from the will all the way to look after the beneficiaries.
If you've just joined us, we are chatting to Brandon Garbutt, the MD of Capital Legacy, and Alex Simeonides, the co-founder and CEO of the company. We're talking about wills, estate administration, and succession planning, putting your affairs in order. Of course, we did say at the beginning of this webinar that we really want to hear your questions, and there's one from Ash Maharaj. I'm going to jump in right now, get straight into the questions to ensure that we get through some of them. Ash Maharaj asks this: I would like to know if it's advisable to take out a monthly policy, so we're jumping straight into the nuts and bolts of what you guys do, a monthly policy with Capital Legacy to cover the cost of winding down an estate, say of a value of 25 million rand. So Brandon, perhaps to your point, you were saying like the first thing is the will, to get that in place. He's talking policies. This may be an opportunity to jump in and start talking about some of the nuts and bolts of what Capital Legacy offers.
Sure.
So if I may, so on a quick 25 mil estate, you're talking about, give or take, R1 million just in the executive fees.
Yep.
I'm guessing on a 25 million rand estate, you've got 2 or 3 properties, so you probably got about another 200,000-300,000 in conveyance fees. So, because everyone talks about the executive fee, right? But everyone forgets about the conveyance fee, the cost to transfer that title.
Yeah, so to just jump in there on conveyance, which a lot of people actually don't realize for conveyancing, is often properties are held between spouses and it's 50-50. And you talk to people and they go, oh, but if I pass away, just my wife will take over or my husband will take over the other 50%. But you actually have to transfer that 50% over, which obviously an attorney has to do or a conveyancer has to do, and there's going to be a charge for that. And that's where we talk about the conveyancing fee.
And then if was it Ash? Huh? If Ash also wants his legacy, maybe he's got some young children that are going to inherit that legacy, there'll be a testamentary trust that will be created. Now that's really where the big costs start ratcheting up. So if that trust is going to run for 10 years, you're looking at about another 1.5 million in fees.
On how much,
and that's never disclosed in the will. Yeah. It's never ever disclosed in the will. And this is what we talk about when we go see a client. We do the will and then we do the calculation of your fees, so we can convert it from this percentage to this real value.
Amount.
So to Ash's question, is it worth it? So that particular kind of need would be what we call our diamond policy. Yep. That would be, depending on his age, would be just under 180 rand a month.
Depending on it, so depending on Ash's age, anywhere between 180 to 220 rand a month.
220 rand a month, and that would provide him 3 million in protection against fees. So you would think, wow, that's a no-brainer. How's that possible? This must be smoke and mirrors, right? But that's what makes Capital Legacy. That's what makes us unique. That's our secret sauce. See, we're actually not a life insurer. We're a fiduciary services provider, and because of that, when we issue the policy, we are accountable for our own cost of winding up the estate. Now, trust me, the cost to actually wind up Ash's estate is not 3 million. It's way, way, way less. So when he takes the policy from us, we actually only insure ourselves for what it really costs us, so Ash is getting that benefit.
That's certainly one of the things that I would imagine would be one of the unique selling points, to use that sort of typical marketing term, if you will. So it must be one of the unique things that you offer amongst many. I see there are a couple of other questions. Dominique, I'm going to come to your question in a minute, Dominique in Cape Town. But I guess one of the things that we've been talking about here, and perhaps avoiding the fact that we are in lockdown, one of the things that your clients and your brokers may have done previously is obviously have these face-to-face meetings. That has not been possible during lockdown. What have you guys done to help brokers along, particularly because I'm sure there are a lot of brokers watching this at the moment. How have you managed to help brokers sort of manage this process of lockdown and getting wills signed and getting wills sorted out?
Yeah, so James, this whole COVID obviously struck everyone by surprise, and as you alluded to, we've been very, very successful in that personal touch. We've been dealing with face-to-face consultation with clients. So the brokers have obviously trusted us with their clients that we obviously go out to, and we go and sit in their convenience, whether at the home or at the office, and actually go through the actual will with them and make them feel comfortable, so that they obviously have everything set. And that's what we've been doing for the past 7 to 8 years, and working well. COVID obviously hit us, and obviously everything had to change. And luckily for us, we had actually been working a lot of technology that would actually allow us to do what I call virtual consultation with an actual client. So through either telephone, your different platforms such as Zoom, such as Teams, we've been able to still engage with the clients. We've still been able to draft the will in consultation with the client. We've been able to show them what Alex was talking about now, the fees that they would incur if they were to pass away. And we're able to actually get them the will by technology for them to actually view and to know that they actually are comfortable with what we've done. What's also done is it allowed the advisor to carry on with his practice. A lot of advisors are going, well, now what do? I can't see my clients. I'm not technology savvy. How am I going to look after them? And what we've actually done is we've allowed that platform for the advisors to still send us their clients, especially in COVID where the will is very vital, and we've still been able to engage with their clients. What we always do is we bring the advisor in. We always keep the advisor up to date. So that whole contact, we kind of networking between the client, the advisor, and Capital Legacy. And we've learned a lot of lessons with regards to technology. So we were lucky enough to pivot quite quickly.
Speaking of technology, there is a poll that is available in this webinar. We'd love to hear from you. We will release the results of the poll a little later on. You'll see in the chat section a little icon that says polls. And the question that we are asking you to respond to is, do you know how much your executor fees will be when you pass away? That poll question again, do you know how much your executor fees will be when you pass away? That poll is live now, and we will give you the results of that poll at the end of this webinar. Alex, one of the things that I'm aware of is that you can go online and sign a will, and it's there are a couple of places that you're able to do that. What makes what you do unique? Why would clients and brokers come to you directly to sign their wills with you?
Well, up until about 2 months ago, we offered the face-to-face consultation. That consultation, which we've now been able to virtualize, and I know that one of the big themes of the webinar that we're doing today is about how we adapted as a business. We were able to turn that around within a week, hey Brandon?
Yeah.
Within a week, we managed to get 100 will agents able to do virtual consults, as if we were doing face-to-face. But to answer your question, why does it matter? So if I'm online, I'm doing a will, and I see the question, do I use a testamentary trust? I'll say no. Oh, but there's an info button that says maybe you should have one. I've got minor children. It's an absolute that I need to have a testamentary trust, but I've got no one at the end of the line saying, no, you actually should select that, Alex, because you don't know what you don't know. So the service we offer is that we make sure that we catch you, okay, as much as we use technology in our business. I mean, we produce 5,000 wills a month. Of course, we use technology to do that, but we use technology to create a bespoke personal service where we've heard you as an individual client and made sure that you don't fall into a trap, or an unintended trap. Because really with the will, you only have one chance to get it right. And we don't want to be the ones to have that on our hands if we got it wrong.
It sounds like you've simplified the process quite a bit from perhaps other institutions that offer maybe a similar product. But apart from simplifying people's lives, Brandon, you've mentioned a little earlier on, you may have mentioned incentives. You offer incentives to help your brokers and therefore pass that on to their clients. What are some of those incentives that you are offering?
So when we talk about incentives, I would like to just separate it. What have we been doing in terms of incentives for the actual customer, in other words, the end client, and what have we been doing for the actual broker? If we look at how we can assist the client in this time, what we've been doing is we're saying to them that you were used to us coming out from a face-to-face perspective, and what we've done now is through technology, we are able to still consult with you from a virtual consulting or telephonic setup. What we've also said to clients is we've actually brought out a specialized product to look after you with unlimited fees during this time, during lockdown, which went very successfully. As well as on the public sector, we actually brought out a campaign where we're actually looking after those public sector members that were on the front line. It was a special campaign. So from a customer point of view, we're always trying to to incentivize them to make sure that they've got the will in place. Like you said, 70% of people don't have it, trying to incentivize people to make sure it's in place. From a financial advisor point of view, the financial advisor has always been the cornerstone or the rock of what Capital Legacy has been built on from a distribution perspective, and we never want to actually leave that. So what we said to advisors is, we said we actually understand the hard position that you're in. None of us have actually experienced any of this in our lives, and we're actually all learning together. But what we said from our point of view is, we understand that there's a contact hardship as well as from a financial hardship point of view. So what we've done over the last sort of 2 months is we've assisted the advisor by saying we still will assist you from a virtual consultation where we get hold of the client and we still obviously offer the will, and your client's looked after. From a commercials point of view, we've obviously said to the advisor, we want to look after you in these hard times, and we run certain campaigns such as a debt relief campaign for advisors who have a debit balance with us. We've obviously given them a period that we sort of don't actually have to call any of that. It's a bit of a relief for them. What we've also done is the financial advisors out there will understand when I talk about the renewals. We've allowed renewals for the advisors to call in their renewals early, that are only supposed to come later in the year or next year. They can call in them now to get them through the hard times. And then finally, from a will drafting perspective, we've incentivized the advisors who are drafting the wills that there's a will drafting fee that they can actually incur as well, that we can help them while they're helping their clients get the wills up to date. So as I said, we've tried to, in these hard times, try and look after the client to say that we're here, we're here to help you, as well as from the advisor point of view. We understand that there's hardships, and we sort of in this with you. We're in the trenches with you.
Before we get on to how that affects clients, direct clients, there is a question from Dominic in Cape Town, and it's an interesting one that speaks directly to wills. My parents were married in community, I guess she means community of property, and have a joint will. My dad passed away in 2015, and my mom needs to thus update her will. Okay, please advise on the best way to proceed. So her parents were married in community of property. Father died in 2015. It's time for a mum to update her will. What is the best way forward for her?
Well, because we've got a bit of time, maybe just share a little bit of information on that situation. So when you have a joint will, it really is just two wills on one piece of paper. The will of her father is now at the master's office. Her mom's will is still valid, but it might not be correct in terms of what she wants. So easiest and quickest way to get it done is to reach out to Capital Legacy to get a new will done. When she does that will, we'll put a sentence in that says, we will revoke the previous will. And then this will come into being. And then she can sign it. And then whatever she wants in terms of her legacy now post the passing of her spouse can be done in that will.
Another question, and I want to bounce off this just because it to my mind it relates. So Jan van Mark asks, how do you get the will signed in compliance with the Wills Act? So Dominic was asking she needs to update her will. Jan has put the focus on what happens now during lockdown if I need to have a will signed. How do you do that in compliance?
This is the crisis we were dealing with.
100%. So we were dealing with this exactly 2 weeks ago, about 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So the problem with signing the will, and we did a lot of petitioning with government, and we said, please, because the will in essence has to be signed with a wet signature, meaning you have to print it and actually sign it. It needs to be witnessed also in a wet signature, and those witnesses can't be the people you are inheriting from your estate or who you want to execute your estate. So now obviously if you sit in the house and the people who you are inheriting are the people in the house, you can't get them to witness, maybe you don't have a printer. So it was, and we petitioned government to allow us to do electronic signing, but they had their hands full, obviously. Yeah. So what we actually came out with is that we created what's called the will sign benefit. Now, in reality, what happens in South Africa is if you have done a will and you haven't been able to sign it properly, meaning it's printed or maybe not printed, maybe you sign it electronically, maybe it doesn't have the correct witnesses, maybe you just done one of those digital signatures, you're able to approach a high court and you're able to say, this is the valid will, okay, upon the person passing away, and please accept it because it's got the following affidavits and supporting circumstances. Now, Capital Legacy, we've dealt with about 37 of these so far.
Yeah.
37. The cost of it's about 30,000 Rand.
Yeah.
100% success. There's 100% success. The problem is it takes some time and it costs money.
Yeah.
The time we can't solve.
Time can't solve. And also the cost. So now if that happens, you have to go back to beneficiaries and say, we can try and get this will through, but there is a cost to this. And people, it's hard cash. So the beneficiaries have to come up with a 30,000 Rand.
Yeah. So what we've done is we've created a universal feature in our product called the will signing benefit. and it releases 30,000 Rand upon the passing of anyone who's done their will during this time in COVID-19 and hasn't been able to sign their will properly, because we back the High Court process and we'll provide the 30,000 Rand to apply and get the will accepted.
It leads me into a question which was not part of what we planned, so hopefully you guys are going to be able to respond off the cuff here.
James, this isn't part of the script.
Oh, right, sorry, let's change it. Hang on. No.
We don't pay you per word.
One of the things that fascinates me, particularly with describing what you've just described, is that you guys don't stop innovating. You're not one of those companies that has a product and goes, this is the product that we're going to market continually. What is it that drives you to continue that innovation and to continue to offer new products? And I'm asking you, Alex, specifically because you are one of the drivers of the R&D department in Capital Legacy. What gives you that motivation to do that?
I think because it's a constant learning. So we're the same company that does your will, that will ensure your policy to take care of the fees and the people who wind up your estate. So what happens is this circle of learning. Because when we get to the estate, then we learn something new that we may have overlooked in the product. And we're in the constant pursuit of the perfect solution for the client. So to give you an idea, when we began the company, we had a basic legacy protection plan. We completely overlooked things like estate overheads. We completely overlooked the very small chance of it happening, but it happened nonetheless, of two spouses passing away together in a car accident. And then on the ground, when things like this will signing problem happen, we continuously look at what we've learned from our 37 cases and how we can use that with what we know. Because we don't believe, I believe that you retire when you think you've got the perfect product. Because you don't.
And I think also, just to maybe add to that, is what we do is we constantly listen. So we're not one of those kind of companies that are, we know everything, this is how it's going to be done. We're constantly listening from our advisors, we're constantly listening from our internal staff, from customers, and as Alex said, those are real problems that people are experiencing. You only get one chance to get it right when it comes to the will and all the expenses occurred or occurring when you pass away. So we're constantly learning, and we constantly want to innovate to see how we can solve these problems on an ongoing basis.
We do cause our CFO grey hair, because our approach is to, what's the problem? Here's how we solve it. So our CFO and our actuary, and then we go do the solution, and then they kind of come to us and they go, but guys, this is going to cost X, Y, and Z.
So myself and Alex are often called in like the naughty schoolboys into the CFO and actuary's office.
I want to move this forward a little bit. You mentioned twice the legacy protection plan. And I think for those people who don't know anything about Capital Legacy might be going, well, what on earth is the legacy protection plan? And what is it? How's it going to help me in this process of my will, my estate administration, my succession planning? What's it geared to do, and how does it work?
So first and foremost, it gives you services. Those services have zero cost on the initial charge, and then when you pass away, those services are indemnified by what we call the indemnity benefit. That indemnity benefit, we've got a whole range of cover amounts depending on your size estate. So you heard when we had Ash's question, we referred to a certain plan type. And then after that, we've got a feature called immediate liquidity. What we experience is that when a person passes away, even if they're well off, there's this immediate need to fly people in, to not just pay for the funeral, there's other incidental costs. So we've got the release of immediate cash to the family, and then the product then also has a thing called estate overhead protection. The reason why we have that is when a person passes away, you've got things like the master's fee, advertising fees, you've got to do your last tax returns, will signing. There's a whole lot of hard costs that aren't part of the executive fee. So the plan also, remember I said it fills all the gaps, so the plan also takes care of that. It can also then be extended to take care of the children's medical aid, children's school fees, the short-term insurance. Because what really happens when you pass away is if you miss one school fee, we know the story with schools now there. If you miss one debit order on medical aid, no one's insured. So that's why we've got that bit. And that was also from a hard lesson that we learned. We actually had those problems in the estates. And then the last one is if you and your spouse both pass away, we've got a release of exorbitant amounts of cash, because that's when you've lost two breadwinners.
Fantastic policy. I want to jump into one of the questions here from Narina Austin, who asks, most people's estates are not big enough to be able to cover the costs of a testamentary trust. How do you overcome that? I'm going to throw that to Brand. We'll throw it to you, Alex. There we go.
Okay.
To you.
So doing the right thing shouldn't be inhibited by the cost. The legacy protection plan takes care of the executor, conveyance, and trustee fees. So there's actually no reason in our world for you not to do the right thing and create that testament trust. Because the fatal alternative, James, is that if you don't do it and you've got cash for or inheritance for your child, then it's going to go to the government's guardian fund. If it's a property, it's going to be locked under custody. So that or the cost, and if you've got a solution to the fee, why not?
Yeah, so I think, James, and I think what Alex was alluding to for on the LPP side, and then obviously for the client who's emailed us there, is that's why I talked about that golden thread, where we've done a lot of financial planning. It's just that middle part of the golden thread. We haven't actually looked what happens beyond when a person passes away. We always have done financial planning up to when the person passes away. And what Alex has alluded to there, and especially in our estate overhead protector and estate gap cover elements of the legacy protection plan, is we look past death, how to look after the beneficiaries. So as Alex saying, we look after things such as if you have the estate's overhead protector, paying for school fees, your medical aid, all those sort of those niggly costs that you actually don't think when you're actually doing your financial needs analysis. You just think they're going to be taken care of. And then especially in terms of the estate gap cover, which look after you if you were to pass away together. But to go back to the question there, is the legacy protection plan, you say you might not be able to cover the costs. That is why we actually have got this in place, because the testamentary trust is post-death. We will need to look after those beneficiaries. And that's what I talk about, that golden thread going through.
But to your question, her trust might be small, her premium might only be 80 Rand a month.
Yeah.
And that, I guess that's a key point here, is that you determine the policy dependent on how much people can afford, which again is incredibly useful.
And I think, James, what's really important is when one of our consultants go out and actually draft the will for you, and we actually run through the actual costs. When you look at that, as Alex alluded to in the beginning, in the old days when you look at it, it says 3.5%. That actually sounds very little, okay? And a testamentary trust, you're looking at 1% to initiate and a 0.75 ongoing in terms of the assets. You start thinking that's actually not bad. But when you actually do the calculation, you see a rand value, and that's what the question was about, is it can run away with you from costs. And that's what we actually show you. And from there, we determine what is actually needed from a plan. So we don't try and oversell you product. We actually say that's exactly what you need, and that's what we match you up to. As Alex said, it can go from 80 Rand to Ash's question, which would have been about between 180 and 220.
Got a question here from Kanyiso, and it's quite a long question, but I think it certainly presents a problem which I think you guys would be able to answer directly. Hi, I'm Kanyiso from Johannesburg. In the case of marriage of community and property, I'd like to find out whether a spouse is able to claim from a will that they are not mentioned in. We're in a case where he explains the whole thing. So just at that point, let's try and answer that question first. If somebody's not mentioned in the will, married in community or property, are they able to claim against that will?
So it's something that we encounter every day, where people try to disinherit spouse and children, James. So there's actually two answers to that question, if I may, for the audience. So the first part is, he said married in community or property. That marital contract is cast in stone. That entitlement to 50-50 of each other's in community estate is done. There's nothing you can do in terms of changing that. The second part is, what if they weren't married in community or property, but they were still married? The spouse would, even if you don't put the spouse in the will, the spouse will still have what we call a marital claim. Okay, and the executor will receive a marital claim guaranteed if that person has disinherited them or not put them in their will. So when our consultants sit with the clients, we try to talk them through this situation. I mean, everyone's got their own situation. It's not a bad or a good thing. To say, look, you're not going to be able to disinherit, yeah? Could you maybe give some of your life cover? Because then that takes care of that marital claim. Very interesting example of this situation was our own Nelson Mandela. So he was married in community property when he passed away. And if anyone remembers correctly, his little clause he put in his will, because remember, he was a very clever attorney. Yes. He actually was. He was a very clever attorney. And his clause said, I will honor the fifth in community claim, but I ask you in front of the whole nation to renounce your entitlement and take this. And so he set a platform up to say, I'd rather give you this, but just get out of the marital claim because I want to do this for everyone else. So it was a very clever clause that he put in his will.
So I hope that answers your question, Kanyiso. I know that you gave a lot more information and a lot more complexity to your case, but I think that certainly does cover some of it. I want to just quickly jump back to wills, because as a business operates to make money. You guys don't charge for wills. How on earth do you make this business work?
You want to go for it?
Yeah, so we get this asked all the time. For the past 8 years it's come. So there is no smoke and mirrors. And the one thing about your Learners Capital Legacy is we're very honest and upfront, and we'll tell you exactly how the business operates. So from a will perspective, if you need to have a will done, we will come out to you at your convenience, whether at your home, whether at your office, sort of day, night, we're available even on a lot of the time on the weekends, and we obviously draft the will. There is no charge for the will, there's no charge for safekeeping, and there's no
you
charge.
don't appoint us as the executor.
Yeah, there's no charge for amendments, and you don't even have to appoint us as the executor. Okay, which is a big point.
Wow. I mean, that is a massive point. I mean, it's like, where's the benefit to you then?
100%. But what we're actually saying is how we've changed an industry that we don't just do the will, like Alex alluded to in the beginning, where he said what a lot of our peers have done is they've drafted the will and then they're hoping for you to pass away and then charge you large fees to wind up the estate. We said we actually want to turn that on its head. And we said we're going to tell you up front, these are what your fees would be if you were to pass away. What we can do, because usually people get shocked by that when you convert that 3.5% and you're conveyancing a testamentary trust into rand value, and we say, this is what it'll cost you from a premium point of view on a monthly basis. But then when you pass away, you know that these fees are taken care of. So if you intended to leave 10 million to beneficiaries, it's not going to be 10 million less cost, it's 10 million because you've got this policy in place. And where you said, where do we make our money, is we obviously do it from a policy point of view. There's obviously margins built in like any insurance product where that's where we make the money. But in saying that, even if you don't take a policy with us, that will is still free. And the reason we do that is because we believe that we offer such a good service that even if when you were to pass away and you haven't got a policy, but you still need to wind up the estate, you will still come to us for us to obviously wind up your estate, where obviously we charge fees at a reduced rate because you've obviously used our company to draft the will. So you get a discount immediately. And we like to think our service has put us in good stead going forward.
Here's an interesting question just on the topic of wills. Elmin Poles asks, are your wills consultants registered fiduciary practitioners and qualified estate planners? That's quite a mouthful. I'll read it again. Are your wills consultants registered fiduciary practitioners and qualified estate planners?
So we've got 3 roles in our business that touch clients. So we've got the will consultants who go out and see the clients. To your question, the kind of person who's needed to do estate planning is not your 10 out of 10 client. It would be your 1 out of 10 client. So our typical wills consultant that goes out won't be going to go see that client. They are there to go see the other 9 out of 10. The person who simply just needs to give everything to their child and a trust of their spouse, send their spouse to a trust. The point is to get it done. For that 1 out of 10, we've got another role in our business called succession planning. And that's a very high-end bespoke service. You may need things like an interview with trust, offshore structuring, very clever clauses in your will to mitigate the liquidity constraints in your estate. And then when it comes to actually winding up your estate, we have estate administrators and estate consultants, and they're all registered with the Fiduciary Institute of Southern Africa, and most are attorneys as well.
I suppose it goes without saying that during lockdown, even though you can have the choice of which legacy protection plan you decide to take, things are a little bit difficult for your own consultants to meet face-to-face with their clients. What are you doing to kind of mitigate this and to help your own people stay in touch with their clients?
So Brandon mentioned it earlier. The solution we came out with at the sort of onset of COVID-19 was an unlimited fee product. So we've always had a high net worth individual product called the Unlimited, and that literally covers your fees no matter what your worth is. And so you wouldn't need to do a calculation. Again, from our learnings, we transferred that to this time. So to save the need to do a cumbersome calculation of all your fees that you really need to do face to face, the product is automatically unlimited for a period of 6 months, and then we can extend that if we see which way it's going in terms of the various lockdown levels. And then when we can actually come and sit with you, we can then take you on to the right amount of cover based on the calculation. And it's anyone's guess when this thing's going to end, so the unlimited will just continue until we can get to see you.
And I think the reason we did that, James, is people kind of running into a bit of a panic mode. They weren't really kind of thinking straight. And what we said is we want to actually make sure that everyone's covered from a will perspective and make sure from a fees perspective. And this made it very simple and easy. Someone knows it's a quick 45-minute call with Capital Legacy under my wills in place. And if the worst was to happen, I've actually been taken care of from a fees perspective.
The thing we said when we were putting it together was the last thing we wanted was someone who actually needed 700,000 having 500,000, and now all of a sudden there's a 200,000 shortfall. So we just made it unlimited.
Just a reminder that we are running a poll for which we will give you the answer, or the results rather, at the end of this webinar. So on your chat section, you'll see a little tag that says polls. Go there. The question that we are asking is, do you know how much your executor fees will be when you pass away? Some interesting results coming through there. Quite a high percentage, or a percentage that may surprise you, seem to know what they're likely to be in for. But of course, we'll give you the results of that poll a little later on. I want to come to another question here, putting you on the spot to figure out how much costs will be involved. Penny Naidu asks this question: can a 220 Rand policy take care of a 25 million Rand estate and conveyancing worth 2 million Rand?
2 million, yes.
Well, it can. It just depends on if there's going to be a testamentary trust or not. But just if you're going on the conveyancing and your normal executive fee, 220 Rand will cover that size of estate.
You're prepared to stake a claim on that. That's brilliant. Okay, so we have another question that I'd like to throw out to you. This is from a 73-year-old, Kenneth Greeny. I do have a will, but no life cover to cover costs of my estates. I guess the question that he's asking there is what happens in that kind of situation as a 73-year-old. So he's got a will in place, no life cover to cover the costs of the estate.
Can we punt product?
Yeah.
I think good opportunity.
So again, we've come back to this thing, learning. So when we started the legacy protection plan, we only insured people up to the age of 60. But then this kind of question happened, and especially from our clients who were taking the plan, well, what about my parents? And the problem is life cover is just too expensive. Too expensive for a 73-year-old. It probably wouldn't even be worth it.
So, and also to jump in, remember life cover, you have to have sort of medical testing and underwriting done as well. So most people at that age, 73, as Alex has alluded to, it's expensive, beyond affordability for most people, as well as having to go through underwriting, which most people will probably fail.
So what we invented was we took our legacy protection plan. Now remember, the legacy protection plan at the heart of it indemnifies, or it uses the cost of our own fiduciary services. Okay, but then we took up all the other cash or life cover benefits, and now we're able to offer a product to the plus 60 market that's simply 137 Rand a month. It doesn't go up according to your age, and you get 90% of your fees taken care of, no underwriting, because we took out the problem of the life cover.
I certainly hope that helps you, Kenneth. Certainly getting advice from the experts for free. It's kind of the way that we do things here. Bruce Manson asks, and this is going to actually lead quite nicely into my next question, is that he asks, as a financial advisor, I try to make provision for the estate costs when I do planning for my client. How would this impact the legacy protection plan that you would offer my clients with Capital Legacy?
So coming from a financial advisor background, using multiple F&A tools, chances are you would have only entered the executor fee. So in that particular case of the question, just means there's going to be more cash available to the family in terms of what you've planned for if you've taken something in conjunction with the legacy protection plan. But the software that's available, Bias, At Work, the various life companies, software, two questions they never ask: conveyance fees, testamentary trust fees. And we found that those are actually the two biggest fees. So chances are the F&As overlooked it.
And if I also want to jump in there, a lot of advisors, and I mean we've got over 4,500 advisors registered with us, is they do a lot of good work out there from an F&A perspective. And a lot of the advisors say to us, but we have actually put in place for those executive fees. The difference though is, and I always talk, my business partners hate me for this, but I always talk about, like, let's talk reality instead of scenarios. And when you pay that money out, to actually then go to a family and said, you've been paid out this amount of money, but their fees, can we have some of the money back? They're not aware or thinking at the time that this money I need to keep aside for the certain fees that need to be paid.
You don't whip out the F&A and say, this is what they said 7 years ago.
Say, well, your husband said, actually, this money is actually earmarked for this. But the rest is for you to live with. So what we do from a capital legacy perspective, if you're doing the LPP, it actually takes a conversation away because you're indemnified of the fees. So the life cover's in place to do what's intended to do, to look after the spouse and the family going forward. We want to look after the fees. As I said, even if a financial advisor has actually put that in place, it's a difficult conversation to say to the spouse, well, you're paid, but it was actually meant for something else. Can we have it back?
Yeah, never an easy conversation to have with anybody. I want to bring this back just a little bit to your brokers who you form relationships with and obviously incentivize them and help them. One of the things that you've done to help them during the lockdown is you have, it's not a word I want to use, but support groups. Like you've got a LinkedIn group that you've got, you use WhatsApp. Just explain a little bit more about how you are working with your brokers to help them still meet the needs of their clients.
So, I mean, James, myself, you and myself had a conversation about 3-4 weeks ago about what we're doing from capital legacy perspective. And everyone says, well, people have got a lot of time when they're at home, especially during lockdown, to say, well, we'll send out communication. But for me personally, I mean, I get probably over 300-400 emails per day. If someone's sending me an email, it's sort of just another kind of email in my inbox. And we really wanted to reach out to the advisors to let them know that we're here to assist, we want to sort of help them and their clients. So we obviously try to use different types of technology. So as many of our advisors will know, we use things such as videos. We're really reaching out to the advisor with our videos in terms of information sharing. We're reaching out to them in terms of on the different social media platforms. We've launched campaigns that have been running during COVID in the last 2 months, which we've really leveraged off on social platforms such as obviously your Facebook and LinkedIn. We've just recently launched our closed LinkedIn page for financial advisors. And that's a page that we actually want to sort of share some industry knowledge with. We want to create a bit of chatter going amongst advisors. Advisors have been sitting at home for 2 months on their own. It can be a lonely space. And we want to try and encourage engagement with us and with other financial advisors. So definitely from a social media point of view, we've, if I can say, upped our game. And also with things like videos and webinars like we're currently doing now to try and bring the industry and the advisors closer together.
Your industry really is built on relationship and communication is key. And I mean, you've certainly indicated here some of the things that you're doing. How, I guess at a personal level, how difficult has it been to kind of pivot into this new kind of way of doing relationships where it's virtual rather than face to face?
So the guys battled. So I remember it was what's today's date? It's the 27th. It was exactly 2 months ago today that everyone started working at home. Remember, lockdown happened at midnight on the 26th. And it was so amazing. That first day was gung-ho. Everyone was taking photos of themselves, working at the desk, working in their lounge, on the patio. And you started to see that sort of falling away. But what we did do in that time is we were quick to pivot. And as I said, through technology, it wasn't just us dealing with the end client. We internally set up a lot of groups in terms of being able to be in contact. So our internal staff were having daily or bi-weekly meetings whereby we'd still be in contact, we're still sending out the information, we're still making sure that the advisor is taken care of. And then kudos to our staff, our broker consultants who were in constant contact with the advisor. And we're actually teaching a lot of our advisors, actually not just from a fiduciary perspective, but from an IT perspective.
Click there.
Yeah, literally, some of our BCs are on the phone going, so that button to the left of that button, click on that, and then you can see me, and then So it was a whole education process, and I think it's been very successful. Nothing will beat face-to-face in my perspective, but we did pivot quickly, and I like to think by and large we've actually tried to engage our broker force and keep them up to date through these technologies.
But sorry to quickly, but the one thing that we've sort of admitted that we did do, I think well, we did a lot of things badly, but we did a lot of things well, is that our existing clients, so if you call into one of the call centers now, you're generally going to get a response saying, because of COVID-19, expected late service. I mean, the service was really poor to begin with. Now you just got an excuse for it. So what we've really been successful at is if you call in, if you need service, if you need to update your will, if you've got a claim, anything like that, we've got no slowdown in our turnarounds. We've got no slowdown in storing the wills and retrieving them, in answering any questions. Literally on the 27th of March, we flipped open the laptops and everyone was live in their homes.
And I think that was quite important. How we did that was it wasn't just from a sales perspective. When I mean sales, it's not a selling perspective, it's dealing with the end client. It wasn't just that in terms of the will and the legacy protection plan and what our consultants actually go out and do, but it's actually the administration side, which a lot of companies actually have fallen short on, is we were quick to pivot from an administration point of view, like Alex is saying. We could still help you from a will perspective. We could still help you if you were battling from a premium perspective. So we kept that whole engine going. It wasn't, well, let's see what happens at lockdown and we'll get back to you kind of thing.
I want to talk in a minute just about, we've talked extensively about what you've done for brokers. I want to talk in a little bit about what you're doing for your clients, but I want to jump in on this question. We're running out of time for you to still post your questions. Don't forget that we will try and respond to them all post this webinar. I know the guys at Capital Legacy love to hear from you. Your Leaseware asks this question: can the contents of a will be contested, and after how long?
So contents of a will are contested, and a company like ours that do between 70 to 90 new estates a month, we actually see it a lot. There's a normal prescription period that law affords, but I mean that's, I think, give and take 5 years. So really, I think it's not about the time period. The question is, can the contents of the will be contested? Yes. Are you going to be successful is the next question. So there's various things you can fight it on. So was it signed with the person being of a sound mind? Was it signed validly? Was it signed under duress, meaning that the person put a gun to your head and make you sign? But if you're trying to contest the actual contents of the will, I don't see how any, and we've experienced this, I don't see how any judge is going to say, no, you signed for it. So you really got to contest the legality of how it was signed. And if it was signed with the right state of mind and under the right conditions. Like I said with the previous question with the disinheritance of a spouse or child, if you've done that, then you actually are afforded in law claims regardless of contesting the will. And often we've actually sit with clients with this exact same thing, say, don't contest the will, exercise your right.
Yeah. I want to come to the poll. Of course, you've been great in answering our poll question, which was, do you know how much your executive fees will be when you pass away? The answers that our viewers could use are yes, somewhat, or no, I need your advice. Any idea, putting you a little bit on the spot here, of where the hammer fell?
I don't know, given the audience.
Yeah, given the audience, I think it's going to be quite a bit more educated than we actually thought in terms of an educated guess in that. Although just cheating using their blueprint planner that our consultants use when they go and see them.
I'll go 40%, I know, my fees.
It's pretty good. Look, it is incredibly high. It's a lot higher than I certainly expected. The yeses of those who know what their fees will be, their executive fees when they pass away, will be 53% in this poll, which is incredibly high. Somewhat 26%, and no, I need your advice, 19%. So to those 19% who have no idea, let me suggest that you get in touch with Capital Legacy very, very quickly so that you have an understanding of what you're likely to be paying on the demise of a loved one, or what your estate is worth. These guys are brilliant in being able to help you sort that out. So that's the result of the poll now, 53% saying yes. I think we'll keep it open for a couple more minutes to see if it changes in any shape or form, but I think that's pretty decisive in that there are a number of people, perhaps brokers who are watching this, who work with you. We'll have to find that out, but there you go, that's the poll. I want to come back to asking how are you helping clients in this time? What sort of incentives? We spoke about brokers and how you're helping them. What sort of things are you doing for your clients?
Well, the first thing we did was we made it categorically clear in a video, like Brandon mentioned, that you're covered for COVID-19, because you've got this thing that deals with your mortality. Does it actually cover me for the thing that we were locked up for? So that was the first thing we did. We gave assurance that you are covered for it, and even if you take one of our new policies, you're still covered for it. The second thing we did, and we spent a bit of time on it, was the will signing. The whole thing comes to naught if the will is not signed properly, and we've engineered a way where you can still at least get some semblance of it being signed correctly. The big thing for me was not necessarily on the clients who have a will and a policy with us, was the work we did with the families in the estates. So we've got about 1,000 estates open. I mean, it was give or take 3,000 families who are waiting on us. And what happened, James, is that the master's office is closed, the deeds office is closed, everything ground to a halt. Now we've got people who are waiting for property to transfer. They maybe had a sale in process. There was liquidity constraints. So the first thing we did is communicate. We couldn't get letters of executorship. So the first thing we did was communicate, make our estate administrators and consultants available to the families and hand-to-hand sort of combat, because it's such a tense time for this to actually happen. And then my business partner here, Brandon, alluded to the big truck. So we made all our administrators really focus on getting the letters of executorship and all the documents ready, so that as the master's offices opened, we literally did have a truck in all of our regions, and we went straight to the master's offices. We got ahead of the queues to get all the stuff out for the families. And I think that's on the ground stuff that we did.
Yeah, as I said, it's the administration side that we actually didn't miss a beat as well. People have gone through hardships in terms of losing a loved one in the last sort of 2 to 3 months, and then all of a sudden nothing can happen, and it was no one's fault. But people just love to have communication, and our administration was always on there for communication. And as Alex says, as soon as those government institutions opened, such as master's offices, we were there. We were always in contact. We knew when they were opening in different regions, and we were there, and we put out the communication to those families, which I think was extremely important.
time is starting to catch up with us, and I know that we have let some of the brokers who are watching this know that there are some new products that are in the pipeline for later on in the year, not only for brokers but also for your clients as well. This is the moment, I guess, that if you've been waiting for that, this is the moment that you've been waiting for, and we are about to reveal some of those great products that you have lined up, because, as I mentioned earlier on, innovation is probably at the heart of what Capital Legacy does, listening to what clients' needs are. Brendan, I'm going to ask you to maybe outline just some of the products that you have lined up for later on in the year.
So we won't really allude to what the actual final products are, because obviously there's certain sort of testing and sort of marketing behind the scenes and finalization. So I always don't want to give away too much, let's be honest. But
you want to keep people happy.
100%, want to keep people, but they are very exciting, if I can put that out there. They're very innovative and exciting. But what I can actually say is I think where we've actually been really, we've been good and we've been lucky and prudent, is from an executive level, we actually had a plan that was put out in January of what we want to achieve in the year. Not just from a commercials point of view, but from a product launch point of view, or bring a product point of view. And I can safely say that we actually not falling behind that plan. That plan is still in place. We're still exactly where we want to be from a month-to-month point of view, and we're on track to come out with some.
Would you be willing to give up one half secret of one of them?
And you're being pressed here by your CEO at this stage.
We'll give one half secret.
We can give a little tidbit.
So one of the things we stumbled on is that the Islamic or Sharia market is completely underserved, with a complete solution from will to estate to making sure that there's a Sharia compliance insurance. So I'll leave you with that. Let's just say we've tackled that whole big problem, and we've got something that's never been seen before in the country.
Fantastic. Well, there you heard it first here on this webinar. I guess, yeah.
Sorry, James, I'd just like to say is whatever we do from a Capital Legacy perspective is we never actually want to follow. We're never going to be one of those companies where, well, we just add on because it's the thing to do. Every single product that we've ever brought out, every single type of service, it doesn't always have to be a product, it can be a service that we're offering. It's always going to be unique, and it's going to appeal to a problem that we've actually found and we actually want to solve. And I think if the audience can understand that, it's always going to be something that we've identified, something unique that we want to help.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that is so exciting about what Capital Legacy does is, and you mentioned it earlier, Brandon, is that you listen. You see what's going on in the market, and I think you also mentioned it as well, Alex. You watch what's going on in the market and you respond to stuff as it's required. So you're always solution-driven, and as you say, nobody likes to follow. You are industry leaders. We're kind of getting to the end of this webinar. Alex, I want to just ask you something here. How positive are you about the future of not only your own business, but just where we are as a country? And I know that's a big question, and I also accept that you probably won't have the complete answer, but I know that you are always thinking ahead of the game to try and see where things will go. So how are you feeling about the next couple of weeks and perhaps the next couple of months for this country?
Not the answer you want. Not good. I'm worried deeply about the third round effects on the property market, and that's a selfish point of view for our business. But on the first-hand point of view, I'm worried about the runner at the restaurant who hasn't eaten or got food or money for the last 2 months. That'll have run. I'm worried about the middle-income market, the hairdressers and the restaurateurs and the travel agents. I don't have a good answer for you. I don't think this is going to end well. I don't see that we've had enough fiscal help, and I don't think there was much ability to give fiscal help. I don't know what the answer is, but it can't be good, in my opinion. I don't think it's going to be cataclysmic, but I don't think it's good.
Well, possibly not the answer that you wanted to hear today, but let me just say, gentlemen, it's been a fascinating discussion, and even though I've known you guys for a very long time, there's stuff that I've learned today. So I certainly hope that you sitting at home watching this, thank you so much, by the way, for taking out time in your day to spend time with us, to find out about your wills, your estate administration, and your estate planning, or your succession planning. I certainly hope that your affairs have been put in order. I think just to wrap it up, Brandon, for you, what does the future hold, and how are we going forward here?
So from a future perspective, I mean, as Alexa said, there's going to be a lot of work going over the next year and probably for the next 2 to 3 years on from that. I don't see it being a positive end to 2020, especially with the different rules and regulations for lockdown. But it's one of those things is you've got to be resilient. And what we're trying to do from a capital legacy point of view is we're actually trying to say, what can we do to improve the industry? Because if we improve the industry, we're going to improve the economy. So from our point of view is we still, as I said, forging ahead. We're trying to look after the role players, and in the role players, I'm talking about the financial advisors, and obviously their clients, to see how we can actually get through this tough time. As I always say, it's we're trying to create a bit of certainty in these uncertain times, and hopefully by the end of 2020 we can come out of this and start building this industry and the economy again, because we need it, and there's no other choice. It's not going to come from the fiscal side of things, as Alex said. I don't think we actually can even afford it. So it's going to be us trying to drag ourselves out of it.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. And of course, if you don't have your wills sorted out, Capital Legacy is definitely the company to get that sorted out for you incredibly quickly. If you don't have your affairs in order, maybe this is the time that you need to be thinking about how to get them in order. And there is certainly really only one name in the industry, to my mind, that you should be talking to. That's Capital Legacy. I'm James Lennox, the Managing Director of Milk&Sugar, who's been hosting and producing this webinar for Capital Legacy and for Mail and Guardian. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on board today. I certainly hope that you've learned something. And don't forget the Capital Legacy, if you want to reach out to them, get hold of them on their website. If you have more questions, they'll only be too happy to answer them. You have yourselves a safe and fun afternoon. Thank you.